So the GTI proves the case that less is more. Will that be the same with these two cars? Hello guys, and welcome to this Volks Wizard video, which is a video I've been hoping to make for a very long time, because about a year ago I made a bit of a controversial video entitled 10 Reasons Why the Golf GTI TCR Beats the Golf R. Now this unsurprisingly didn't go down too well with Golf R owners, even though a lot of the information contained within it was fact, not opinion. But I wanted to give the R another go, and I bought this one in specifically to put it up against my own GTI TCR. So it's a 7.5 DSG-R with 310 horsepower, the most powerful R you can buy. And that's up against my 290 horsepower DSG TCR. Now we want to find out which car is the best hot hatch. So it's best to lay out the criteria for something magazines either forget to do or move the goalposts on quite frequently. I find the easiest way to look at it is which car can be the most comfortable yet the most exciting at the same time. I think they call that the bandwidth of the car. So for example, say we gave the R a score of 6 for comfort and a score of 6 for excitement, that would be a score of 12. If we gave the TCR a score of 6 for comfort and 7 for excitement, then that would be a score of 13, and that would win. So we're going to test drive the car thoroughly and get a feel for how they can do those two opposing disciplines. But before we do that, let's have a look at the basic stats that make up these two hot hatches. Okay, let's start off then by talking about statistics. So this car, my TCR, produces 290 metric horsepower. This R produces 310. Now most of them are 300, but this is an early 7.5 before the WLTP reconfiguration of the engine, which lost the 10 horsepower. So it's a 310. It produces 400 newton meters of torque as well. I think these 310s got 20 newton meters more. So if it's a 300, it would be 380 newton meters of torque, which is a dead match for the TCR. Power to weight ratio is an interesting one. It's really hard to get a figure for the weights that you can depend on, because you've got different door numbers, you've got different gearboxes. So what I've kind of calculated is that if it's a 310R, it's pretty much the same power to weight ratio as the 290 TCR, because this is quite a bit lighter. If it's a 300R, it's slightly inferior power to weight ratio, but it's still so close that I wouldn't even worry about it. Let's just say they're roughly the same power to weight ratio. When you drive them, they feel pretty similar in acceleration anyway. 0 to 60 time, well, this is two-wheel drive, so it does it in 5.6, which is still pretty good. I think this Rocket does it in 4.6. That's mind-blowing, isn't it? That's a whole second quicker than the TCR. And if it's a 300 horsepower, it's 4.7, which is still amazing. It will do 155, the TCR, because it's restricted to that, as is the R. Both cars have got performance packs that do other things, but will also raise the limiter. This is 164 with a raised limiter. This is 166. We'll come to the performance packs in a minute. Emissions wise, this is 175 grams per kilometre and this is 195, quite a big gap, which didn't used to be as big until they tested them on WLTP. Likewise, the MPG is better for the TCR, it's 36 miles per gallon, this is 32. Price wise, well, when it came out, the TCR was about £1,500 cheaper, but for the 2020 model year, they forced upon everybody a £3,000 Akrapovic exhaust, which made it about £1,500 more than the R, which was annoying, especially if you ordered the performance pack, which took it over 40 grand, and you had to pay the luxury car tax, and that was another £1,500 extra as well. So basically the Akrapovic cost you 4.5 grand. Don't get me started. For 2020 anyway, let's have a look. It was 38,170 for a 5-door. That was 37,120 for the R. So about £1 grand cheaper for the R. And that's actually allowing for a higher first year road tax. So take away the first year road tax, this car was £1,500 cheaper than the TCR, which a lot of people found it hard to justify. But then, for example, you got the bigger brakes, which forms part of the performance pack on this car. So both cars have got performance packs available. Not many people went for it on the R, because all it gave you were the bigger wheels and the bigger brakes for £2,300. With the TCR, the performance pack for about 2 grand gave you the bigger wheels, it gave you the dynamic chassis control suspension, and it gave you the raised limiter as well. So that seemed like better value. 3 grand gave you the 19-inch wheels with Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2 tyres, but I think the best one would have been the Reifnitz wheels with the Pirelli P0s, because they're usable all year round. Other things to consider are the boot size. Because this is four-wheel drive, you lose a bit of space in the boot. This is a 340 litres, this is 380 litre boots. It's still about 10% difference. They both got additional servicing needed because they've got Haldex based transmission improvement. So this has got four-wheel drive, needs a Haldex oil change every 3 years, although actually according to a lot of specialists it needs a new Haldex pump every 3 years. And I thought this might get away with that, but actually the VAQ front differential is basically like Haldex for the front axle, and that again needs an oil change, and again can go wrong quite a lot. Especially said if you track these, you need to change that front oil in the Haldex unit on the VAQ every 2,000 miles. That's how quickly the oil goes off. So yeah, those are the stats. Other little differences are the exhaust. This has got a very quiet exhaust, even though it's got 4 pipes, it doesn't really make an awful lot of noise. I will demonstrate that now. The TCR's just got the traditional GTI wheelbarrows, but actually, like the GTI Performance as well, it's quite a noisy car, which is great because it gives it a lot of character. I shall demonstrate that now as well. Okay, let's now have a look around the outside and the inside of these two cars in detail. Okay, let's start off then by comparing and contrasting the exterior of these two Golfs. So they're both 7.5 generation cars, which for the R, I think looks a lot better than the 7. We've lost the matte aluminium. It just looks a bit more aggressive, a bit less GT spec. I mean, it's still got this chrome strip on the grille, which it doesn't really need, does it? That goes into the headlights, but it's a bit lost. On the GTI, we've got red as well as the chrome, and that goes into the headlights and really looks quite good. The GTI's got honeycomb, where this has just got slats. And interestingly, it looks like the grille in the R is an upside down version of the one in the TCR. So basically the TCR's got a smiley face and the R looks a bit unhappy. Whether that relates to how the cars drive, we will find out shortly. Wheel wise, well, I don't think you can get a better looking Golf than this R. Lapis blue Pretorias, check that out. That's a great looking car. The TCR in pure grey with black wheels, it's a bit McDonald's car park. This would look good in a smart hotel car park. So yeah, there is a bit of a difference there. Maybe the TCR loses out because of that, because people will mark you out as a boy racer because of the black wheels and the colour. This just looks like a Golf in a smart paint job with some smart wheels, which, yeah, has its pros and cons. Well, it does until you look at the back. So the first time we saw these exhausts was about 7 years ago now, when I ordered mine, and when I take photos of them, they look really good, and I think we've got used to them. So we've got a slightly revised diffuser on this car compared to the 7. I think the sill covers are now gloss as well, so it looks, yeah, really good. We've got a more interesting LED rear lights as well, which of course the TCR has got. There is a little bit of a diffuser down there somewhere. Yeah, I've got a few fins and a bit of honeycomb. But then, check this out, the biggest diffuser in the world. So that's a lot more aggressive. Just got 2 exhausts, but it really, yeah, even though it's got 2 exhausts, I think it looks a lot more interesting than the R. You could say it's gone too far though, I get that. I mean, that is ridiculously big. If you remember how they were when they came out on 7 GTI originally, they were a quarter of that. But yeah, they are both good looking cars. This has actually got the lip spoiler, which was part of the performance pack on the R. I only found that out recently, oddly. So yeah, it's nice. We've got a black roof on this as well. You couldn't spec an R with a black roof. So they're both great looking cars, just in slightly different ways. This is probably what I should be driving as a virtually middle-aged man. But if you were a younger owner, you'd probably find it a bit boring and you'd love sort of the primer paint job and the black wheels. While we're here, let's talk about the brakes. And so this car's got the 2-piece brakes that are the same as the ones on the Club Sport S. and they're 2 kilograms a bit lighter than the ones on that car, same size, so I think they're 340 or 345 millimeters, same calipers as well. So let's have a look at the R1s. These are just one piece steel, but it's really easy to swap that for that. You just change the disc, so it's quite a good upgrade, and they do look quite good on there. And I did a track day in those, and whilst they got very hot, they didn't warp, so I was really impressed with those. I'll always remember a picture of Jethro Bovington in Evo magazine standing by an R, probably on a Welsh country road, with smoke coming out of the front arches where he'd overcooked the brakes. Let's have a look inside then. If you like my carbon fibre mirrors, they're not factory option, they're just copies, but they're pretty good. They liven up the car, but they weren't standard on this car. You could expect them for £400. Okay, in here we have a bit of colour then. So we've got red on the sill cover there, we've got ambient lighting that's red as well. We've got red in the seats. We've got Alcantara here, but I don't think it's as light as the one in the Golf R was originally in the Mark 7. I hope not. We've got a bit of leather as well. Well, actually it's probably a bit of pleather, to be honest. But if you've got that and that and that, it's probably a slightly higher spec seat than the one in the R, which has just got the Alcantara and then cloth. Steering wheel wise, we've got perforations there and a dead ahead marker. Let's just get in and have a look. So that's a nice welcome, got red stitching as well. It isn't that different to the R though, as we'll find out. We've got a bit of flash of red there, but it all makes a difference. But I think the big difference for me is what happens when you do this. You've got that ever-present burble of exhaust which just sets the tone, and I think that's probably the thing that I miss most from the R. So yeah, I mean, you know, you look at the infotainment screen, the climate control, there's really nothing over here that's any different to the R. Even this bit I think is pretty similar, or it's probably more carbon fibre-y in the R. So yeah, stitching there, a bit of Alcantara there, but it's not night and day. But the good thing is it's a nice interior. Black headlining, GTI on there. Right, let's quickly pop over. Oh, a bit of red stitching and a bit of Alcantara in the door cards as well. That's actually quite nice. I don't notice that very often, but when I do, I really like it. Okay, so first thing you notice, well, a tiny bit of blue there on the sill cover on the ambient lighting, but it's really just a sea of black. So we've got a bit of blue ambient lighting here, but the GTI's got it red, but there's nothing on the steering wheel, just sort of silver stitching. It's much more low key, which I guess is the R. So there's no pleather here, it's just cloth or Alcantara, but these are good seats. I probably wouldn't spec leather. I didn't like the original Mark 7 seats because of the cream. I ordered leather, and I probably wouldn't do that again. I'd spend it on DCC or something useful. Okay, let's get inside. Right, well, this is, to all intents and purposes, the same. There's an R on the steering wheel, there's no dead ahead marker, no red stitching, but there's no difference. Yeah, this is slightly different, but not obviously so. We've got a bit of pleather in the door cards. The Alcantara on the TCR is really nice, but that's not bad. That's a good door card compared to the later gen cars. Right, let's start her up then. So this is, hopefully you'll see what I mean about how it's missing something. We've got R on there as well. There isn't actually, I think, anything that says GTI on the virtual cockpit on that car. Can't hear anything. So yeah, it's all pretty similar. Right then guys, I think it's now time to go and drive these two fast hot hatches. Okay guys, well, welcome to my Golf GTI TCR now. I've had it about 5 months. As soon as I saw the spec of these in early 2018, I knew I had to have one, and it has not disappointed. I used to own a Club Sport S for a couple of years, and this car on paper seemed to offer all the excitement of that car with none of the downsides. You get back seats, you get parking sensors, you get cruise control, and after 5 months I can tell you it hasn't disappointed. The beauty of it is that it's comfortable enough. It's not massively comfortable like the Golf R, that's especially when you've got DCC, but the thrills you can get from it are in a different league. so it might be less comfortable, but on the thrill stakes it's way different, as I will demonstrate. So we've got 290 horsepower with just front wheel drive. We've got a very clever VA key front differential. On this car we've got dynamic chassis control, which is in comfort mode now. It's how I run it most of the time, but I've got it in individual, so we get a bit of exhaust poppery. And it's slightly damp. Get to the apex now on the gas. It's insane. It's just so feisty. And that's what I love. On this kind of road, within the speed limits, you can get a thrill. The Golf R's better at going around corners, but it's too good, because to get that level of thrill, you have to go faster. And that's sort of dangerous and pointless. It's a better car to go around corners. It will go around corners faster, but imagine if the R was just a slot car, and it, like a train, it would go around corners like it was on rails. Well, that wouldn't be that exciting, because you just knew it was going to do it. In this car, there's always that sort of bit of fear that it may not, that, you know, the wheels are spinning up, the traction control light's on, but you're still going forward. It's still trying to do it, and that's just so exciting. Yeah. Okay, on to the Golf R. I haven't driven a Golf R for ages properly. I haven't driven a 7.5, I think, pretty much ever, so maybe it will absolutely annihilate this car. Let's get in the Golf R and find out. Okay guys, well here we are behind the wheel of the Golf R then, and it feels really familiar having just stepped out of the TCR, because it's pretty much the same. The only thing we don't have is a dead ahead marker on the steering wheel, and there's a bit of blue on the instrument cluster that has the effect of making it feel like you've left your main beam on at night. But I did drive it at home last night in the dark, and on the motorway at least it felt identical. Shut your eyes and you could have been in the TCR. On a road like this, which is slightly less well surfaced, it feels distinctly different in that the ride quality is not as good. This car's got expensive wheels and cheap dampers, which is really the wrong way around. The TCR's got cheap wheels and expensive dampers, and it's a lot more supple on this road. For all this car's four-wheel drive grip, it's not much use if the tyres aren't in contact with the road, which on a good British B road could quite often be the case. Another problem with this car is that I'm not a big fan of these Continental Sport Contact 5Ps. I think they're worth about 5p, to be perfectly honest. These have been pressure checked, they're on 36 psi, got about 5 mil of tread left. This morning I aquaplaned on the motorway. I've never done that in the TCR in much heavier rain, and that was only at 60 miles an hour. And on a local roundabout where I like to push it a bit, it just understeered like the worst car I've ever been in. It's horrible understeer there. That's not even that fast, I'm not flooring it or anything. You can hear the revs once again. And again. Now I think these tyres were chosen for their low rolling resistance and therefore lower emissions, but that kind of has the effect of making this car a bit edgier than I remember it. So you can't just throw it into a corner and think it's going to get you round. You do have to concentrate, and that was a bit of a surprise, to be honest. My old one on REO50 Bridgestones was pretty unstoppable all weathers. I don't think I ever saw the traction control light appear on that. Now, putting that to one side, let's talk about the engine then. We've got the same EA 888. It does feel very similar to the TCRs. It's got a very subtle fart to it. It's got torque everywhere. It likes to rev as well. Yeah, it's very similar in that respect, and performance wise they are there or thereabouts the same. Gearbox, we've got 7-speed DSG. I love this gearbox. I was never really a big fan of the old 6-speed DSG. This came out with 7.5 and it's just so smooth. Whether you're flat out on a road like this or manoeuvring around town, it's just hard to unstick it. It's like it's got the workings of a Rolex instead of the workings of a Timex. It's brilliant. So yeah, a good showing from the Golf R, but which one's best? Okay guys, it's now time to come to the conclusion that I hope you've all been waiting for, and that is to find out what is the best hot hatch out of these two. Is it the Mark 7.5 Golf GTI TCR or the Mark 7.5 Golf R? Well, before we conclude this epic battle, let's go back to 2005 when these two cars had their own little epic battle. We've got the Mark 5 Golf GTI and we've got the Mark 5 Golf R32. Now on paper, the R32 absolutely annihilates the GTI. It's got 50 horsepower more, it's got four-wheel drive, it's got a sonorous V6 engine under the bonnet, and yet in pretty much every road test, the GTI beat it, and that's because it didn't have all that weight over the front axle, which meant that it went round corners better, and doing that, going round corners well, is a key attribute of a good hot hatch. So the GTI proves the case that less is more. Will that be the same with these two cars? Well, okay, I started off driving the GTI TCR. I know this car intimately. It is quite a good car in the corners. Yep, it's only two-wheel drive and it's got a lot of power, but if you're careful with the throttle, even in the wet, you can make good progress. And even when the traction control kicks in, this is something people don't appreciate. It still keeps on accelerating. It's not like the olden days where it would cut the power. It's a very clever car, and I don't think it felt particularly hobbled by the damp conditions today. They should have really favoured the R, but before I got onto the B roads, I'd had the aquaplaning incident, which was, you could say, probably just down to the tyres, but these are the original Contis the car left the factory on. They've got good tread and they've got the right pressure in them. So why it did that, I don't know. And then a few minutes later, it understeered on the roundabout that I do push cars on a bit just to see what they do. And I wasn't really expecting that either. I actually drove a 2016 car there, possibly in the dry, maybe a little bit drier, maybe a little bit damp, but not as wet as today. And that actually lift off oversteered, which was surprising. Well, there was none of that. This was just understeer and understeer and understeer. I went back to do it in this car just to check, and this really didn't exhibit that much understeer at all. I was using the same gear, same roundabout, same conditions. Guys, we're on the same roundabout, so let's just see if this will understeer like the R did. Oddly, it's got a lot of front end bite. I mean, if you've got four-wheel drive and the front wheels aren't biting, you're not really going to do an awful lot. So let's just try that again just to be sure then. So put it into second this time. Like a totally different car. We're on some Goodyear F1s, same width, 235s. One more go because I can't believe the difference. This Transit will leave us alone. Okay, so into second. No. So I lost a bit of confidence in this car after that because I just didn't expect that. So when you throw it down a B road, you remember what it had done in a safer environment and you really kind of, yeah, hold back a bit. Now I know this gives the impression that it's going to kill you, but it doesn't. It just teases you like that. But if this had done on the B road what it had done on the roundabout, it would have been a bad accident. And the fact it's four-wheel drive and you expect so much grip from it is probably why I didn't really enjoy driving it today. Now that could all be down to the tyres, which I suspect, even though they look like normal Continentals, might have been chosen by VW because of emissions reasons, and therefore their low rolling resistance, but they did really hobble this car today. It's still a great car, but when it comes to hot hatches, if you want the thrills and the excitement, and you've still got enough comfort, it's the TCR that wins. So let's do that scoring thing. So for comfort, it's not particularly supple. I'd give it 6 out of 10. It's got DCC, you can put it in comfort mode. For excitement though, I'd give it actually 8 out of 10, so that's a score of 6 plus 8 is 14. For comfort, without DCC on this car, it's probably a 6 again, maybe actually a 5 because it's a bit less supple than this. So if you put DCC on this car, it'd be a little bit higher, but so 5 for comfort, and for thrills, I'd give it 7. So that's a score of 12. So it's 14 for the TCR and 12 for the R. Anyway guys, I hope you've enjoyed this Volks Wizard video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, please do comment, please do share, and as ever, please do subscribe. It's really important that you subscribe to this channel because there are far too many views from non-subscribers, and that really doesn't help this channel grow in the longer term. So click the subscribe button, it's free, and I'll see you for the next one soon.